In this lesson, we'll start to talk about grid lines, these wonderful little datum points that we use in our project to control our construction lines. Very handy vertically and horizontally. So let's go start an empty project. Let's just use a mechanical template here off of my quick access toolbar. So the first thing we usually establish is our levels and our grid lines. And then we link in, if we're mechanical, we link in the architect's model or the structural model, and then we start to draw our stuff. So the grids and levels are usually established by the structural and architectural people. Mechanical people don't generally get to say where the grids and levels are. They just kind of go along with it and then hang their stuff off of all the other components. So regardless, mechanical template here. When we create grids, grids are very much like levels. The only thing is levels, you have to be in a elevation or a section view, and grids you can create in a section, elevation, or plan. So we start our grid tool, and grids are really, they represent either the center line of our structure or the edge of our structure. You have to decide that in the beginning. And as you drag, you can use your shift key to keep it nice and straight. So you place that and then click again and hover, click, and then again use your shift key to keep it straight. You don't have to worry too much about getting them in exactly the right place because you're going to dimension them afterwards. So we, get in, there's our building, very boring building, okay? Then we do some dimensions and we say, okay, from here to here is this big. And you say, okay, 92 feet. No, it's 95 feet. So you pick on this grid line and then you change this to say 95. Enter, click out. Now I want to include these other two guys. I pick on here after the fact and I say edit witness line. I add a point there, add a point there, click out, and I'm done. So there we go. And if I don't like it, I can click on here, use my arrow key, nudge, nudge. Okay, arrow key, you can nudge things back and forth, or a shift arrow key is a big nudge. Okay, shift arrow key or regular arrow key. So we can nudge that into place, click out. Add another dimension down over here, and then maybe pick my points in between, wiggle, wiggle, click, escape, escape on the keyboard. Then we can pick on here first, and then we'll see these numbers light up and change. Okay, the size of these are large. Remember, I changed that in my options bar to make them a 14-point font. So we've got our grid lines in there. Now, once we have our grids, you can click on here. They're kind of like levels that you can turn the edge off or on, and you can hit the dog leg on here. Okay, same thing with the 3D. If you change it to be 2D and you drag it, it'll only change the length of that grid line. They're really tight together there. I'm going to pull this guy off. Okay. There it is. So if you pick on here and you make it 2D, then you can drag it. And this is the 3D point. We're going to do a special lesson on that. So again, if you click on here, as long as the lock is on, if you move this, it's going to move the other ones with it. You can see the blue line. If you take the lock off, then you can drag this guy by himself. If you hit the 2D button, what happens is I'm dragging the end of that only in this view. Okay, if I look at a different view that shows this grid line, it's going to show it extending to here. So 2D means that endpoint is only where it is because of the view I happen to be in at the time. So you can go in, click on there. If you want to rename your grids after the fact, you can go in here and name them. If I try to name this grid 2, it's not going to let me. It's going to say, Revit already has a grid 2. So you can't do that. So then I'd have to change this to 3, and then this one is 3. So I'd have to change this to 3 and 4. So you'd have to start at this end and say, okay, you are grid 5. Oh, and it says there's already is a 5 because it continued over here. 5, 6, 7, 8. So when you are renumbering your grids, you have to be careful because you cannot have the same number twice on a grid line. So as you're placing them, okay, let me take all these grid lines and delete them. Click, crossing box to select them, and then hit delete. Okay, crossing box to the left, window box to the right. As I start to draw grids, it'll remember the last one I did. So if I go in here and I draw a grid and I click on there, it's going to remember the last one I did was 8, it's a 9. I'm going to go right in here and make this a capital A. Click out. Now I don't even have to restart my command. It's smart enough to let me keep going. Click on here and look, it put a B in there. Aha. So it knows enough to start over when I start over. Now this doesn't have to be straight. I can be angled. Now I want to go this way and I want this to be number 1. So I'm going to drag over, and before I pick my next point, I'm going to go right in the middle of this blue E and make this a 1. And then click out once. Then I'm going to pick on here, and that'll be grid 2. That'll be grid 3. And this will be grid 4. Escape, escape, and you can see those numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4. Then I can click on here and drag these guys and try to get them to line up. So generally what I do, you get your levels in, get your grid lines in, get all your grid lines numbered properly, get them all dimensioned properly. Grids don't have to be straight. You can create an arc grid as well. Okay, so you can create a grid line that is not square. Okay, and then you can drag that point around. You can turn it on or off. Okay, so grid lines are there, and you can drag them around, and they're also visible from your sections. If you go to your elevation, there's the level lines, and there's those grid lines. Okay, the grid lines have to be within your view. If you go to your crop region, and your crop region you've turned on is being cropped down to here, it's only going to show you that one grid line. Okay, you have to make sure that your crop region is big enough that it would see the grid lines if they are there. Turn the crop region off. Okay, so we can go to an opposing east-west elevation. There's our grid lines there. Okay, there's our level lines. So we want to get our views kind of nicely set up over here. Okay, so grid lines, we can draw a grid line in a elevation or section view, or we can draw a grid line in our plan view, but we want to make sure we get them in first and dimensioned. And then probably, I would say, grab all these grids at some point and pin them. Boop, pin them, click out. That way someone can't accidentally move or relocate it.